She helped change the face of hip-hop, but they left her name out. You've heard Push It. You've danced to Shoop. You've screamed, What a Man.
They're blown away to see a female DJ, but not just a female DJ that's looks good.
But behind all of those anthems, there was a force of rhythm, precision, and power, a young woman on the turntables who kept the beats alive.
It is an absolute honor.
She didn't just play the music. Her name was Spinderella.
To induct Salt-N-Pepa, Spinderella in the 2025 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And somehow, the world forgot her. Or maybe it was made to forget her.
That day that I did not drop the song, I just, all of that plays in my head still, in my life. And
in every great story of fame, there's a chapter people don't talk about. The one where the spotlight starts to flicker, where loyalty is tested, where legends are made and sometimes erased.
When I'm like talking with Jeff, and I'll be like, damn, that's motherfucking Jazzy Jeff. It's wild to me.
This isn't just a music story. It's a story about legacy, about betrayal, about building an empire only to be locked out of it later.
Well, I would say, let's give the people what they want. And I also would say, we have work to do internally.
It's about being the youngest one in the room, the only girl behind the decks and still owning every single stage she touched. At just 16 years old, Spinderella joined Salt-N-Pepa, a teenager, barely old enough to drive.
Sound nice, check one. Sound nice, check two. Sound nice, check three. Are you ready?
Suddenly holding down the rhythm section of the most electrifying all-female group in hip-hop. While her peers stressed over SATs and crushes, she was headlining world tours, flipping records on live TV, and redefining what a DJ could be.
I don't want to abandon our legacy. I just mentally have to do what needs to be done for myself. And there has to be a mutual respect.
But here's the thing. When the industry talked about Salt-N-Pepa, it often only mentioned two names. When the awards came, when the movie dropped, when the legacy was honored, she wasn't there. There was no tribute, no explanation, no apology.
Here I go again, girls, what's my weakness? Okay, then chill it, minding my business. You saw I looked around and I couldn't believe it.
What happened to Spinderella? Why did one of hip-hop's greatest female DJs, a pioneer, a prodigy, get cut out of history?
Y'all know this one. Come on.
And how did she fight her way back, building her own legacy, louder than ever, with no label behind her and no cosign from past?
Come on, let's talk about sex. I can't hear you talk about sex. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about it.
This is the untold story of Spinderella, a story of silence, spotlight, betrayal, and beat drops that still echo through the culture.
And that's it.
Before the stadiums, before the gold records, before she was Spinderella, she was Deidre. Deidre Muriel Roper was born on August 3rd, 1970, in Brooklyn, New York, a city that was building hip-hop from the pavement up. Back then, the streets didn't just play music, they breathed it. Every corner had a boombox. Every block had a beat battle. Hip-hop wasn't on the charts yet, but it was already in her blood. Raised in a single-parent home, Deidre grew up surrounded by rhythm, culture, and quiet resilience. Her mother worked hard to keep things together, and music became a kind of therapy. Her older brother introduced her to the underground sounds coming out of the Bronx and Queens, Grandmaster Flash, Afrika Bambaataa, the Sugar Hill Gang. She didn't just listen, she absorbed. One day, her brother brought home a set of turntables. He had no idea that moment would change her life. Deidre watched him play, her eyes locked on the spinning vinyl. She wasn't interested in being in front of the MIC. She wanted to control the sound. The way two records could talk to each other, blend, bounce. It was like discovering a new language. While most kids were outside riding bikes, she was inside perfecting her transitions. She taught herself to beat match by ear, practice scratch routines until her fingers were sore. She'd sit with a record for hours, learning every beat, every silence, every drop. She wasn't just a music fan. She was a student of the craft. By the time she hit her early teens, Deidre was DJing local parties around Brooklyn. She brought her own crates, set up her gear, and let the music speak. No hype man, no team, just her and the turntables. People started to notice. Not just because she was a girl, but because she was good, really good. Her name started circulating quietly at first. "That girl can spin," people would whisper. Her sets weren't flashy, but they were flawless. She had an intuitive sense for what the room needed, when to slow it down, when to turn it up, how to build energy without ever saying a word. And then came the nickname, Spinderella. She picked it herself, not for glam, but because it meant something. In the fairy tale, Cinderella was overlooked until she changed everything. Spinderella was writing her own version, one where the girl didn't need a prince, just a pair of turntables and her name on the flyer. But being a female DJ in the early 80s wasn't just rare, it was almost impossible. The industry didn't take women seriously behind the decks. She'd show up to parties and be told the real DJ would be there soon. She faced skepticism, jokes, flat-out dismissal. But once she started spinning, the room always changed. She had no manager, no deal, no backup plan. But her drive was bigger than the obstacles. She wanted to be the best, not just the best girl. The best, period. She didn't know it yet, but her break was coming. A phone call was about to come through, one that would pull her from the underground and place her on a global stage. One that would turn Deidre from Brooklyn into Spinderella of Salt-N-Pepa. That call would change everything. Sometimes life doesn't knock. It just calls. One day, Deidre was just a teen from Brooklyn with crates of vinyl and a reputation bubbling under the surface. The next, her phone rang and everything changed. It was 1986. Salt-N-Pepa, one of the first all-female rap groups to break into the mainstream, had just lost their original DJ, LaToya Hanson. Their manager, Herbie Lovebug Aza, was looking for a replacement fast, and word had gotten around. There was this teenage girl in Brooklyn, quiet but deadly on the decks. Deidre's name came up, and just like that, she was in. She was 16, still in high school, still living with her mom. One day, she was balancing homework and house chores. The next, she was on a flight to meet Cheryl Salt James and Sandra Paper Denton. She didn't know what to expect. She wasn't walking into a rehearsal. She was stepping into a movement. Salt-N-Pepa were fierce, loud, dynamic. They were already making noise-challenging stereotypes, flipping the male-dominated hip-hop game on its head. Deidre? She was a quiet storm they didn't know they needed. The second she stepped into that room, something clicked. There was chemistry. Balance. The duo needed a DJ with real skills, not just a prop, but a performer. And Deidre needed a shot. Together, they became a trio, and hip-hop history was never the same. She didn't get much prep. No easing in. Just a crash course in fast fame. They threw her into videos. They booked her for live sets. Her first real shows weren't house parties. They were on stages with thousands watching. It was overwhelming. She was the youngest, the newest, and the only one who didn't have a voice on the MIC. But when the spotlight hit and she dropped the beat, people felt it. The crowd didn't care how old she was. They felt the bass. They heard the skill. The pressure was enormous. She was just a kid navigating grown-up chaos, the business, the egos, the travel, the lack of sleep. But she never cracked. She studied, adapted, on every set like she was born for it. While her friends were going to dances, she was touring. While other girls worried about dating or grades, she was spinning for the hottest female rap act in the world. Her life wasn't normal. It was iconic. And still she stayed grounded. Her mom was her anchor, calling her before shows, reminding her who she was. Every time she walked on stage, she carried Brooklyn with her. That shy girl with callous fingers and unmatched focus, that's who made it. Salt-N-Pepa started gaining serious traction. Tracks like Tramp and My MIC Sounds Nice hit hard. They had an attitude, power. But now, they had a pulse, and Spinderella was it. She wasn't just playing the music. She was driving the energy. Her presence shifted the entire dynamic of the group. With her in the back, Salt-N-Pepa up front, they looked and sounded complete. She wasn't background noise. She was essential. This wasn't just a gig anymore. It was history being written, one scratch at a time. The world was finally watching. And Spinderella was ready. With her signature braids, oversized headphones, and fearless presence behind the decks, Spinderella stepped into the 90s not just as a background DJ, but as a frontline innovator. Salt-N-Pepa were making waves with their bold lyrics, but their rhythm, their live presence, that came from her. By now, the group was exploding. Their third album, Black's Magic, dropped in 1990 and took over the charts. Let's Talk About Sex became a cultural lightning bolt. Expression and You Showed Me put their range on full display. And then came Very Necessary in 1993, the album that would seal their place in music history. Shoot! What a Man! None of your business. These weren't just hits, they were anthems. Salt-N-Pepa brought the voice. Spinderella brought the energy. She scratched their transitions live. She elevated the stage show. She was the timing, the pulse, the beat beneath every lyric. And audiences felt it. In an era when most DJs were hidden behind their setups, Spinderella was front and center, often with MIC in hand, hyping the crowd, turning every performance into a celebration. Whether it was MTV, Bet, Arsenio, Soul Train, or the Grammys, if Salt-N-Pepa were there, so was she. Not just in the background, not just with them. One of them. For millions of young girls, especially young black girls, Spinderella was proof. You didn't have to fit the mold. You didn't have to rap or sing to be legendary. You could control the show from behind the boards. You could spin, scratch, mix, and own your space. And she didn't just own the stage, she took over the world. Salt-N-Pepa went global, touring Europe, Asia, Australia. They played to sold-out arenas in countries where hip-hop was still finding its way. Through every time zone, Spinderella kept the tempo, whether it was a tiny radio booth in Berlin or a massive festival in Tokyo. Jet lag didn't matter. Technical issues didn't matter. The moment the crowd started chanting, she was locked in. But fame came with pressure. She had to be flawless. One mistimed cue, one broken transition, and the whole show could collapse. The spotlight demanded perfection, and Spinderella delivered. Again, and again, and again. She brought precision, discipline, power, not just rhythm, responsibility. And for a young woman in an industry full of egos and politics, that pressure could have crushed her. But it didn't. Instead, she grew. On stage, she turned sets into rituals. Off stage, she handled interviews, supported her group mates, and even started developing younger artists. While Salt-N-Pepa focused on the spotlight, Spinderella was often behind the scenes making sure everything worked. Her voice, calm, low, steady, became a balancing force within the trio. Salt-N-Pepa were passionate, sometimes clashing. Spinderella, the youngest, brought maturity beyond her years. She didn't yell, she executed. And still, recognition was uneven. Magazine covers might show two faces. Album covers, two names. Spinderella's name was often left off promotional materials entirely. TV segments would gloss over her contributions if they mentioned her at all. She smiled through it, but inside, it stung. Because she knew what she brought to the table. And so did the fans. The ones who stood front row, pointing up at the DJ booth. The ones who shouted her name louder than anyone else. The ones who said, "You're the reason I picked up turntables." Ask anyone who saw the trio live who really felt those shows. They'll tell you, it was the girl behind the decks. The one with the quiet hands and the loud legacy. The one who held the whole thing together without needing to say a word. The one they called Spinderella. Fame looks bright from the outside, but behind the flashing lights is a different kind of shadow. As Salt-N-Pepa soared, Spinderella should have been celebrating. She had the dream job touring the world, making history, influencing culture. But something was off. Despite being one-third of the group, she wasn't always treated like it. Her name didn't always make it onto album credits. Her face wasn't always included in the photo shoots. Her voice, often, wasn't even part of the conversation. She was spinning on global stages, hyping millions, and locking in beats that drove platinum-selling albums, and still, there was a subtle silence around her name. Interviews would treat her like a sidekick, a support act, not an equal. And that hurt, because she was equal in dedication, in talent, in impact. But the music industry wasn't built to celebrate quiet power. It was designed for the loudest voice in the room. And if you didn't demand attention, you risked being ignored. Especially if you were young. Especially if you were black. Especially if you were a woman. Spinderella was all free. She was still growing up in the middle of fame, forming her identity while being boxed in by the expectations of others. And that internal conflict ran deep. She wanted to be grateful. She was grateful, but she also wanted to be seen. Not just as a DJ. Not just as a girl in the back. As Spinderella, there were days where it felt like she was walking a tightrope, balancing professionalism with pain. Showing up with a smile while wondering if she mattered behind the scenes. Trying to celebrate the wins while quietly carrying the weight of being overlooked. She couldn't speak out too much. Couldn't complain. Couldn't be difficult. Because in the industry, difficult women disappear. So she buried it. Focused on the work. Poured everything into the performances. But even the strongest shoulders get tired. And over time, those small exclusions, missing credits, missed opportunities, being sidelined in decisions started to feel like more than oversights. They felt like erasure, and that was a price she paid for being essential, but not centered. Still, Spinderella didn't walk away. She stayed. For the music, for the legacy, for the fans screaming her name from the back row to the front. Because even when the spotlight didn't hit her directly, she knew her impact echoed through every beat. She believed in what they were building, but that belief would soon be tested in a way that would break her silence and shatter the trio. In 2019, everything unraveled. After more than 30 years of loyalty, Spinderella didn't get a conversation. She didn't get a thank you. She got paperwork. Legal notification that she was being cut from Salt-N-Pepa. No tour. No calls. No involvement in the upcoming Lifetime biopic. No invitation to represent her own story, the one she lived, built, and protected for decades. Just silence. Publicly, Salt-N-Pepa called it a business decision. But to Spinderella, it felt like something else. After 3 decades of touring, performing, promoting, and pushing the group forward, this was how it ended. No warning, no closure, just erased. She was devastated, hurt, betrayed. And for the first time, she broke her silence. Spinderella filed a lawsuit, not to destroy the group, but to demand what she was owed. Unpaid royalties, breach of contract, years of being cut out of decisions and left out of compensation. She wasn't asking for special treatment. She was asking for recognition. But when the headlines hit, they didn't paint her as a trailblazing DJ. They painted her as a disgruntled third member. Comment sections questioned her motives. Some fans didn't understand the pain. They only saw the 2 women with microphones. But the real ones, the real fans, the DJs, the women in hip-hop, the people who'd followed her since Brooklyn, they knew what was happening. History was being rewritten without her. Then came the Lifetime biopic in 2021, a retelling of the Salt-N-Pepa story, without Spinderella. Not a scene, not a voice, not a face. She wasn't just excluded. She was erased. And in that silence, she made a decision. If they wouldn't tell the truth, she would. She took to interviews, podcasts, panels, social media. And slowly, the public started listening not just to her side, but to her truth. Because her story wasn't one of drama. It was one of endurance. A girl who gave her youth, her energy, and her genius to something she believed in, and who was tossed aside when the spotlight shifted. And yet she didn't fall. In fact, the moment they tried to silence her, she found her voice. And what came back was overwhelming. Love, support. Fans flooded her inbox, thanking her for the years of inspiration. Young women sharing how she made them believe they could be DJs too. Spinderella had been left out of the narrative, but the culture never forgot her. And when she finally spoke, she didn't just reclaim her legacy. She rewrote it. They thought the story ended when she walked away. But Spinderella wasn't finished. In fact, she was just getting started. After the legal battles, the media storms, and the public erasure, many expected her to disappear, to fade into the background like so many forgotten names from the golden age of hip-hop. But Spinderella did what she always did. She got back behind the turntables. And this time she was spinning for herself. Free from group politics, free from being boxed in, she reintroduced herself to the world not as a DJ from Salt-N-Pepa, but as a solo artist, a pioneer, a brand, a voice. She started headlining events under her own name. Festivals, clubs, celebrity after-parties. She played sets of the Essence Festival, BET events, women's empowerment concerts, and the response was always the same. She still got it. But even more than the music, it was the way she owned the moment. She stood behind the decks like a woman who had earned every inch of her presence. Confident, centered, in control, and as the music evolved, so did she. Spinderella didn't cling to nostalgia. She leaned into the future, mixing old-school soul with Afrobeat, hip-hop with house, bringing multiple generations together on one dance floor. She wasn't just riding the wave. She was spinning it. But behind the scenes, she was building something bigger. She became a mentor not in theory, but in action. She started coaching up-and-coming female DJs, hosting workshops in cities across the U.S., speaking to young creators about branding, ownership, and resilience. "They told me I didn't belong here," she once said at a panel. "So now, I make sure nobody else has to hear that again." She partnered with music tech companies, created scholarship opportunities for women in audio engineering, and her influence stretched beyond music into culture, education, and entrepreneurship. Her voice, once quieted, became a megaphone. She returned to radio, hosted podcasts, and appeared on major platforms like The Breakfast Club, Red Table Talk, and The Tamron Hall Show. Every time she spoke, the audience leaned in not for gossip, but for wisdom. She talked about mental health, about boundaries, about starting over, about knowing your worth and protecting it at all costs. Her comeback wasn't about revenge. It was about rebirth. Spinderella didn't just survive the industry. She transcended it. The turntables were still spinning. The rooms were still packed. The legacy was still growing. Because Spinderella was never just a DJ. She was and still is a rhythm in the resistance. There are DJs. And then there's Spinderella. Not just a woman who spun records, but a woman who spun culture. Who stood in the shadows of 2 microphones and still became unforgettable. Who showed an entire generation that you didn't need to be loud to lead. She was a rhythm, the precision, the heartbeat behind the hype. Her hands didn't just move vinyl. They moved boundaries. She didn't just hold the beat. She held a generation. Through every tour, every transition, every moment of exclusion, she kept spinning. Not just because she loved it, but because she knew the power of presence. She knew that for every girl watching her on stage, there was a future being rewritten. And no matter how many credits tried to forget her, the culture never did. Because legacy isn't what others give you. It's what you leave behind. In 2022, when Salt-N-Pepa were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Spinderella was finally acknowledged. After years of being cut out, her name was officially cemented in history. But truthfully, her legacy was already sealed long before the trophies. Every female DJ is rocking a set today. Every girl picking up headphones and saying, "I can do this too." Every artist who's been overlooked and still chose to rise are part of her impact. Because Spinderella showed us that real power isn't in being seen. It's in being unignorable. She didn't just survive hip-hop. She shaped it. Her story is a reminder. Speak your truth. Protect your legacy. And when the world turns the volume down, on your name turn the bass up louder. Spinderella didn't fade. She remixed her destiny. So the next time you hear Push It, or Shoot, or What a Man, don't just nod to the beat. Remember who made it hit. Say her name, Spinderella, because legends don't fade. They spin forever. And if you felt something in this story, if you respect what she built, what she endured, and what she continues to inspire, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe for more powerful stories that need to be told.